Meet John R. Edwards, a licensed psychotherapist, trainer, speaker. John has over 30 years postmaster's experience in working with clients. He is the first Black psychotherapist in the world to become a certified brain spotting trainer and consultant. He currently resides in Oakland, California, where he maintains a full-time private psychotherapy practice. While this amazing clinician moves at full speed, he finds time for fun. In his spare time, John enjoys music, especially opera, plane spotting, and traveling. Welcome! I am Kim Wilson, and I am joined by my very special guest, John Edwards.
Hey, Kim. Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me. Boy, oh boy, I'm so excited about this show, John, because I'm always thinking about healing and transformation. And for the past 30 years, that's what you have been doing with intention.
Yes, indeed. The language of healing and transformation is more recent for me, but there was sort of always the underpinning of all of the work that I did, which was, to help people live better lives. But in the last 4 years, I've really become very intentional about using the words healing, recovery, and transformation, because I think that's what's needed to have a different quality of life.
Yeah. You know what? I feel like as a clinician, we're talking about it more than we did 20 years ago. Being in the field for over 30 years, how have you seen it change in a way, just the way we embrace mental health? We see it in the workplace, we talk about it in our families. Have you noticed any changes?
So on the one hand, everything is kind of the same, right? So people are still like, "You're seeing a therapist? What, you crazy?" And so there's still that kind of reaction that some people experience. And then on the other hand, as you said, there's more and more discussion about it. TV shows, some for the better, some for the worse, now talk about mental health issues, and there's blogs, there's articles. I think certainly the advent of the internet has made the topic of mental health, I think, much more accessible, with a greater variety of ways people can talk about their mental health and access mental health services. So I would say probably the biggest difference has been, as you're saying, the sort of the greater talking about it. Although some of the talking is about the same in terms of, why are you seeing a therapist? And people sort of, I don't really do that. I take care of myself, or I don't tell anybody my business and stuff like that. So
Tell anybody my business. One of the words that I even before I became a therapist, John, one of the words that I'm hearing now, and we're using it to label things properly, label our experiences, is the word trauma. Trauma was not a word that we used often, and when we used it, we connected it to the experience of a soldier, somebody who had been in the military, involved in combat. So now we know that trauma touches so many people beyond, who's never had military experience. And one of the things that really drew me to you and the work that you do with trauma recovery, and this new mode of therapy called brain spotting, which I think is fascinating. Talk to me a little bit about, set that up for me, just even how you got introduced to brain spotting, what brain spotting is, and how we use it to treat trauma.
Sure. So I don't actually really remember how I got into brain spotting. So the way I describe it is that the universe brought brain spotting to me. I was looking for a way, as most clinicians do, most therapists do. We're always, we're going to trainings. We're always trying to find, what the research and what are the new modalities that can be helpful for clients. And a lot of folks, they have what we call complex trauma histories, right? So they were physically abused or sexually abused, or, they were neglected. So there's a lot of stuff, homelessness. So there's a lot of stuff that people have experienced. And a lot of these folks suffer,
Mm,
even though they may be going to work, but internally they are suffering.
mm.
And I was looking for something, and eventually I found brain spotting. I don't remember. I was on the internet. I'm like, oh, brain spotting. That's interesting. And I just looked at it, read it, and I'm like, that seems cool. I'm gonna go to the first training. And I did that in February of 2018, and it was life changing. I
Really?
cannot tell you how life changing brain spotting was for me and for everybody that I know that has encountered brain spotting. Now, I'm sure there are a couple of people who be like, it didn't really work for me, but I'm telling you, um, it's next level. So for most people, actually just to double back a little bit in terms of trauma, and you talked about sort of people thinking, oh, it only happens to like soldiers or these sort of these sort of shock trauma kind of things. You were in a terrible car accident, or you were sexually assaulted, or something like that, and then people go, "Oh yes, you were traumatized." But Peter Levine, who does another modality, or the founder of another modality called somatic experiencing,
Mm-hmm.
talks about what we call little t traumas and big T traumas, right? So big T traumas are things like, in a terrible car accident, a natural disaster like a flood or something. And then little t traumas are the things that we don't necessarily think can be traumatizing. For example, if you grew up with a single parent and they had to leave you alone at home because they had to go to work so that they could, buy food and pay rent and stuff like that, but you didn't get to see them very often, even though on the one hand you might know your mom or your dad or your grandma, whoever's taking care of you, loved you. These long gaps of not knowing what's happening can be traumatizing for some people. Now, I'm not saying that everybody, I'm just saying for some people. And that's one of the biggest things about trauma, is that while there's certain things that certainly overwhelms, which is a big aspect of trauma, right? It overwhelms our system. We have no capacity to cope. And but it's also very individual. So one thing might be traumatizing to someone, but that same thing might not be traumatizing to someone else. So we really have to do individual assessments. Again, certain things are just traumatizing across the board, right? So like sexual assault is traumatizing across the board. Um, and so that's just to give people just an idea of trauma. It overwhelms your system. You're scared, you're frightened, you feel helpless, you feel like you're going to be annihilated or die. Those are some of the things to look for, to go, was this traumatizing for me?
So,
Now, our
yeah, I want to jump in there.
Sure.
Um, for those, who are not clinicians, or, somebody who may not have experience with therapy, and, they were attracted to the show because, it's like, what? I haven't, there's a possibility that I may have had trauma. So if somebody walking into your office and they know that you offer that mode of therapy, and when you use the word assessment, like, because when you hear the name brain spotting, it's like, well, how will you assess me? Are you going to take a look at my brain? What does that assessment look like?
So that is one of the beauties of brain spotting. Traditional therapy requires people to An assessment is where your therapist sits down and they ask you a whole bunch of questions, and they give you a questionnaire, and they
Mm-hmm.
ask you where you were born and do you have siblings and what happened to you in the past, and they do all of that kind of stuff, and then they take it and they form a picture of what might be happening with you. You can still do that as a brain spotting therapist, but we don't need to do that.
Mm.
So someone comes into I mean, and for those of you who are not therapists, there's certain things that if you're a licensed therapist that you have to do. So we do those things anyway, which I'm not going to get into, but we do those things anyway. But we don't have to have um, a long extended assessment in order to do brain spotting, and that is the beauty of brain spotting. So if you were to come to me, for example, Kim, and you say, John, I just graduated with my master's in psychology or my master's in counseling, and I've been working hard and I'm just trying to take this licensure test and I'm really anxious. I don't have to now go through an entire history with you. I can actually start brain spotting you on your test anxiety in that session.
Really? I mean,
Yes.
like, how, John? I mean, like, I mean, like, I mean,
Let's
like,
do let's do an experiment. And all of you who are watching, we're going to do an experiment. This is brain spotting light is what I call it. All right. So this is what I want all of you to do, including you,
okay,
Kim, sorry. Um, I want you to think about something. Don't think about the biggest thing. Just think about something that's mildly irritating, kind of frustrating, or even a conflict. Let's say you're not sure if you want to buy those shoes, or if you should paint your bedroom blue, or whatever it is. Just something like that. And what I want you to do, without moving your head, I want you to look, just move your eyes to the left. And I want you to notice what it feels like as you're looking to the left, as you're noticing that issue that you brought up. Notice what's happening in your body. And now I want you to look directly ahead. Same process. Noticing what it feels like with that issue now that you're looking ahead. What's happening in your body. And now look over to your right. And same process. Just noticing what's happening in your body about that issue, what it feels like as you're looking over to your right. Okay. Tell me what your experience was, Kim.
well, I was thinking about my eyelash falling off, and I thought if I move my eye, so John, I was experiencing a little fear.
Okay. What happened when you were looking over to your right with your fear?
Well, it's like it's really going to come off now because it's this eye, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, so that's what I felt.
Uh-huh. What happened when you looked straight ahead?
I thought, you know what? I think I may be okay now because I was looking at the decor on your wall, and I was like, okay, my eyes are not shifting. I'm okay. And I noticed that my hands were cold. I didn't notice that at first. I think they may have been cold in the beginning, but just because of you telling me to focus, I was able to identify that my hands were cold.
Mm-hmm. What happened when you looked over to the left?
Um, when I looked over to the left, I just really thought my eyelash was going to flicker. So, I felt that fear.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you looked straight ahead, you got in touch with the coldness in your hands.
Yes.
Right. And so that's just a very light demonstration of what brain spotting is. So in brain spotting, our phrase is where you look affects how you feel.
Mm.
So when you look over to your right, you feel differently than when you look straight ahead, than when you look to the left. And your audience members may have experienced it. Now, some people don't experience it right away. Some people might be like, "Oh my gosh, I felt that." So when I do this demonstration, some people are like, I'm not really sure. And then other people are like, "Whoa, that was really a stark difference from when I noticed to the left." Usually it's not when you look to the right, it's a particular way. When you look to the left, it's a particular way. It's just that there are differences when you look in different directions. So for somebody looking over to the right, they might be like, well, I mean, the eyelash could fall off, but it's not the end of the world. And then when they look over to the left, they could be like, oh God, please, please, please don't let it fall off. Please, please. And so that fear can come up more. And that is the basis of brain spotting. So I'm going to take out I have my brain.
Goody, there's nothing like a visual show and tell. Yes, come through, John.
This is our brain. And I'm going to pull the brain apart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm going to use this part of this half of the brain. Just going to put it here. Right. So you can see it's on top. Turn to the side. That's what
Mm-hmm.
it looks like. So in our everyday life, this is a very simplistic explanation. But basically, we have the top part of our brain,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's called our neocortex.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where we organize. This is where people come to your show. This is where you go to the grocery store and you have your grocery list and you're able to do stuff from this part of the brain, the neocortex. And then in here, we have this is our limbic system. Some people
Mhm.
call it our emotional brain, and then we have our brain stem down here. When
Mhm.
we have trauma, it doesn't lie in this part of the brain. It doesn't lie up here. Trauma goes into our limbic system, in here, and then into our brain stem, and then into our bodies. There's not a lot of roads from this part of the brain going down. There's like a very tiny portion up here. You people call it top-down regulation, which is just in the prefrontal cortex that helps us to emotionally regulate. The problem is that our limbic system and our brainstem can quickly shut down up here if things aren't going well. So the example I like to give is you're going to have a party and you're inviting Simone and Tom, and you know Tom is a jerk, but you decide, you know what, Simone is a good friend, and Tom is her husband, and I'm just going to be in my best behavior, and you can organize up here. You're gonna where Tom is gonna sit, and you're gonna sit him next to Bob because they both like football, and you've like worked everything out up here. And then the dinner party comes, and Tom says something about your souffle,
Mm.
and you lose it, right? Because you're
Mhm.
like, after I did all this work, oh my god, excuse me, I have to go to the kitchen. You go to and you have
Breathe.
to breathe because this part of the brain has overridden what's going on up here. And
Mhm.
if Tom continues to act out, you might tell him to leave,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Or you might say, I'm never inviting him back. Or you might stop enjoying the party, all of this stuff because this part of the brain overrides what's going on in the neocortex. Brain spotting, through where we look, theorizes that when we look, we gain access by A, we identify the issue. I'm worried about taking my test and I'm anxious about it. So we've identified the issue. Then we activate the issue, right? Okay, where can you feel that anxiety in your body? And
Mhm.
then we use this, we call this a pointer, to kind of pinpoint visually through the visual field where we can get the greatest access to what's happening with the anxiety in our body. And by doing that, we're going to bypass here because the neocortex is going to want to be like, why are we doing this? This makes no sense. I mean, I thought I was here for therapy. We're not even talking. Brain spotting, because our eyes, which are part of our brain, goes directly into our limbic system. And so brain spotting is a limbic system therapy.
So, John, there's a lot of terms to remember: neocortex, limbic system. You
Yep.
know, how do we say that in a way for somebody? We break it down like, okay, on a conscious level, this is what's happening to you. Just to kind of
Yes.
override some of those terms.
So this is a different way of doing therapy. So part of it is there's a little bit of a mindset shift in what is happening in the therapy. So when you're doing brain spotting therapy, you're not sitting talking a lot with your therapist. So it's not a lot of sort of conscious awareness. So you're not sitting saying, "Oh my God, I'm terrible at test taking. I don't know what I'm going to do." Because when we go into our emotional brain, which is another way of saying limbic system, it is outside of our awareness.
Okay.
But our brain and body is naturally designed to engage in healing and recovery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
it's just setting it up so that can happen. So once you start your brain spotting process and you are looking at this pointer and you're just focusing on the issue, you're focusing on your body sensations, you start to go, oh, I need to study more. I got to stop hanging out with my girlfriends because, they already got their jobs. One is a nurse, one is a lawyer. They already know what they're doing. I need to tell them I need to study. That is what happens when we become the process we call it, this process of looking at the pointer after we do the setup is we call it focused mindfulness, where all of the body's attention and the body's healing systems, the nervous system, everything is focused on helping you to heal and recover or make right whatever is not going right. And so it's not a oh let me talk. So people tend to be like, what's happening? But when they do it, what tends to happen is folks say things like, I don't know what kind of voodoo that was, but I have so much more clarity now. Or yeah, I think I really need to start looking for a different job. And the thing about brain spotting is one of the ways I describe it is talk therapy, which is good. It's not talk therapy is bad. But talk therapy is like if you're driving down the street and there's a lot of potholes and stuff, so you have to put up signs. Don't go down this street because there's 4 big potholes. And so then you have to take detours and you have to so by that I mean you have to deep breathe, you have to do all of these things to manage what's going on in your life. Brain spotting emotionally and neurobiologically brings in the body's own healing machinery. It comes in, it digs up the road, cleans out the dirty water, and repaves it. So you don't have to, you just drive down the road.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that word focus because I guess that's why it is used with some athletes in sports performance because just being able to focus and it seems like it almost creates a sort of discipline because when we focus on something, it gives it the opportunity to grow. Even those positive thoughts, focusing, like the example that you gave, like some of my friends are doing what they need to do. One is a nurse, one is a lawyer, and it gets you to focusing on what you need to do for you instead of what everybody else. And now that you have this razor sharp focus, you have this clarity to create some plans.
Yes. Yes, that is it precisely. That is what brain spotting does. So if you have, and brain spotting just doesn't work with trauma, we also have expansion brain spotting. So if you're like, I want to like expand my business, but you're having some difficulty, you can engage in this focused mindfulness process that takes you on a journey for expansion. It's not only about trauma and solving problems, but it's also expansion. So there are a couple of people who have Academy Awards because they brain spotted their parts.
They
Um,
brain spotted their who?
their parts.
Oh,
So
okay.
so they have
Wow.
Academy Awards, and I don't know who they are. I just know that they're there, but they brain spotted their parts because it is this focused mindfulness process that allows the body to engage in its own healing and recovery process. And so lots of times, and this is sort of the newness of therapy from neuroscience, we know that the body, there's this book called The Body Keeps the Score, which I'm sure you've heard of by Bessel van
Yes,
der Kolk, that
yes.
when we have these negative experiences, it sits in our body. So in order to heal and recover, we have to have a way to release it. And brain spotting is a phenomenal way of releasing it with a therapist. Now, some people will say, well, why can't I just do this on my own? Like many things, some people can, but you really need a therapist to help keep you guided and so that you don't overdo it. If anybody's ever like broken their hand or their foot or something, eventually people, I'm like, I can go jogging tomorrow. Where actually, no, you can't. And you really need somebody to kind of help you stay grounded and centered. And lots of times, trauma, almost all the time, trauma occurs when we're alone. And so part of the healing process is to undo that aloneness. So you have a trained therapist with you that is present with you and able to be on your journey for healing. So brain spotting is also very relational, but it's relational in a different way. It's not a lot of talking, it's about presence and attunement.
How many sessions would you say a person usually engages in with this mode of therapy? 3 to 6, 6 to 12 weeks, or 6 to 12 sessions?
It depends on the person. It depends on the severity of their trauma. And it depends on, each person's constitution. So I have clients that I've been seeing a while, um, that that some have very significant trauma histories, and we've been doing brain spotting for several years, but their quality of life have changed significantly. So they're no longer as depressed. They've changed jobs. There are these kinds of things. The other thing that I like about brain spotting is that you don't run around going, well, my therapist said I should, because the healing is organic. You just kind of do it, and then your friends are like, what's up with you? Like, what? What's up with you? And you're like, what are you talking about? Right? So I speak for myself. I used to have a lot of difficulty making big decisions because I had a particular experience in childhood, and I used to call it the refrigerator decision. We don't have time for me to explain it all. But I did brain spotting. I do not. I do, and trust me, I've had a lot of therapy. I've had Jungian therapy, analytic therapy, CBT, family therapy. I got a lot of therapy. Brain spotting is the one modality that cleared that all up for me.
Wow, that's
It's
amazing.
just gone. I just make decisions now. Not that I just make every decision, but that sort of like hand wringing, oh my God, that used to plague me. Gone.
Wow.
Completely gone.
John, believe it or not, we are almost at 30 minutes. I'm going to have you on again. There's some more stuff there. Listen, there are a couple things happening in this moment, and I want people to understand and not miss this. Whenever we open ourselves up to opportunity and we just kind of look past, like, what if they say no? Just do it because you just may get your yes. And I met John through social media. Facebook is an app. So I can actually say, I met John on an app. The thing is, when you are intentional about doing something great, people will see you. Sometimes we forget, we think about how many likes we have or nobody knows, and we're not always doing what we are called to do, trained to do. We know we can do it. Just so you know, continue to do great things. And whether it's one or two people, somebody needs what you're offering. The second thing I just really want to get to briefly, just as a male therapist, John, do you have a lot of men seeking therapy with you, or has it been a pull over the years? Do you get to do a lot of work with men?
I do have a number of men in my practice, and I think going back to your earlier question, I think that's one of the things that has shifted is that men are now coming to therapy. But I think part of the shift is understanding that therapy is about your own healing and getting and transforming your life. It's not about just being like, well, my mama didn't breastfeed me, and so therefore that's why I'm a jerk. Like, that is not what therapy is about. And I think sometimes that's what people think is happening, that you just go and you chat. And believe you me, I give all of you permission. If you're going to your therapist and your therapist isn't helping, fire them. It's okay. You can fire them and find someone who is working for you. So yes, I see men, and I wish more men would engage, and they are engage in coming to therapy, because it's an amazing thing. Some of my male clients, they hang out with other guys, and then every now and again somebody will let something slip that they're in therapy, and then the other person will be like, oh yeah, I'm in therapy too. Oh, you are? But it's a big kept secret, right? Nobody is saying they're in therapy, even though in a group of like 6 guys, maybe 5 of them are in therapy, but nobody's actually coming forward and saying, I'm in therapy.
Yes. One last question, John. I know that in your spare time you like to listen to opera music. John, do you sing opera, John?
When I was younger, I did. I went to a religious school in Massachusetts, and when I was younger, I sang in the college choir, and I did a couple of solos and stuff like that. And then when I graduated college and graduate school, I was actually taking voice lessons, and I would sing. And actually, I have a very dear friend that wrote a Christmas cantata, or he calls it a Christmas musical, and he graciously allowed me to sing the part of Joseph about 10 years ago. But I haven't sang anything like recently, like, especially with, pandemic going on. But yeah, I do love to sing.
Well, John, I'm going to be doing a series soon called "It's Never Too Late." If you think you want to get your pipes ready, let me know, honey. Listen, thank you so much, John,
Thank
for
you
taking
for
out.
having me. I
Yes,
know it's a lot of information, people, but I'm going to make Kim have me come back for a part 2.
yes. And John, he is more than a therapist. And I always say at any given time, we're more than just one thing. He is a trainer, he is a consultant, he's a speaker. So even if you don't, well, John is licensed in several different places. John, let them know where they can find you and learn more about what you offer.
Sure. I am in Oakland, California. My website is westcoastpsychotherapy.com, or you could just type in my name, John R. Edwards, LCSW, and everything about me will pop up. I'm licensed in California, New York State, Washington State, and the province of British Columbia, Canada. And I do brain spotting trainings, and then I work with eating disorders. I'm a Gottman certified Gottman method couples therapist, and then I work with anxiety, depression, trauma, and addictions.
Well, fantastic. And I'm going when I upload this will be uploaded on tomorrow, and then when I do the after show promos, that website will be in the link, so you'll be able to link right to it. Thank you so much, John. And for all my viewers, you could have been anywhere in this world, but you chose to rock and roll with me. If anybody has not told you today, let me be the first to tell you, you are amazing. See you next Thursday. All right, John, hold on. Okay, there you are.